Leafs win. Samsonov got the belt last night, by the way.
Hey.
Yeah, nice. So he's back. But now 2 games until the NHL All-Star break, and finally the Leafs get off the West Coast road trip. James Mirtle, senior managing editor at The Athletic. What's up, brother? How are we doing?
Hey, JD.
Hey, what's up, man?
How's it going?
It's going good. I don't even know what to say about this one. Like,
you know what? I think the way to do it, JD, is to look at the road trip as a whole, as opposed to like the one win over a Seattle team missing 7 guys.
Yeah, well, that was now their 20th point in 20 games is the way that I'm looking at it. It's 20 points in 20 games. And the entire talk heading into this one, and well, pretty much every game for the last week has been, if they lose in embarrassing fashion, is this going to be it for Keefe? Is this going to be it for Keefe? What is your read? What are you hearing about the actual status of his job security? Because I feel like they got out of this with just enough where now 2 games ahead of NHL All-Star, he's given himself at least a little bit of breathing room. I don't know. What's your actual information on it, though? What's your actual feel?
I still don't think it's as close as kind of the rumor mill is saying it is. Like, there's no one around the team. None of the insiders are hinting that I've seen. I haven't heard anything to that effect. I mean, people need to realize, like, they gave him the extension in the offseason. It was 2 more years beyond this season. Mm-hmm. It wasn't a token 1-year extension, don't want you to be a lame duck. They gave him 2 more years. So I think it would be a tough sell to go to the board and say, we just gave this guy a 2-year extension and we want him gone now. Mm-hmm. I think it's going to have to get a lot uglier than this. I think they're going to have to be out of a playoff spot, and I think they're going to have to lose more games. You know,
but you say a lot uglier than this. It's like, this could have been very, very ugly, right? This is if that hand pass doesn't get called and it's a 4-4 game against Calgary, and they would have only gotten that 1 win against that Kraken team who, didn't have any players on the roster. And then you're showing up against Winnipeg in a back-to-back set. I don't know. I feel like you're pretty damn close to as ugly as it gets. That's what I'm saying. They did just enough to make it not obvious that this was the only move that they could make.
I still feel like they got to try and change the roster around. I think they got to shuttle out some guys that are struggling, but maybe that's too hard to do. I mean, maybe it's just the logjam around the league's not allowing them to do that. And that's where, if they continue to muddle along and they're in 8th in the conference in the second wildcard spot, or they're out of a playoff spot in another, I don't know, they're probably going to give it another few weeks, is my guess.
Yeah.
I think you're right with All-Star. He's going to get obviously he gets the 2 games against Winnipeg. Yeah. Maybe they win one of those.
Maybe. Maybe.
Yeah.
Hey, maybe they get one. Maybe they get a split. That's the way they're looking at this thing. It just, here's my feeling on it. And this has remained the same. I understand what they did. I genuinely don't believe Keefe is some kind of, I don't think that he's quote unquote lost the room, right? You saw the effort that his team gave yesterday. I thought that they were poorly prepared to start the game on Saturday. But again, to me, that's still more on the players, because I'm sure it was told to them, hey, Vancouver cares about this game and we haven't won here since 2019 and we never actually win here, because they're fired up for it. And they sort of started slow. It killed them. It cost them. It bit them in the ass. But I keep hearing that same thing of, well, you got to change the roster. And I go, well, what's going to change? When you said it, the logjam around the league, who is going to get moved off of this Leafs team as of right now, right? What's the piece that you move? And what are you bringing in? Because you don't have a deep stable of assets. I don't see a lot of teams looking to move certain players right now. We're a month more? We're more than a month removed from the deadline. I think it's like a month and a half. It's March 9th, right?
8th, yeah.
Yeah, March 8th. Yeah, well, I was close. I was damn close for a guy off the top of my head. Well, it's pretty damn good. Pretty good. We're a month and a half away from this thing. How could you trust that coach to put the player in a position that you expect them to? Because the one thing about this team is, Domi played 10 minutes again last night, right? Robertson played 9 minutes again last night. And I defended Keefe last night on Leafs Talk because I said, hey, he's coaching for his life here. He needs to get that W. He needs to make sure that his top guys are out there. But if you're tree living and you're looking at the track record that you have of guys you've brought in and the way that these guys have been deployed, how do you just automatically assume that they're going to be on the same page with whoever it is that they're going to end up trading for?
Yeah, fair enough. I mean, that's going to have to be a conversation between the coach and the GM over what this team needs to. I'm sympathetic to the argument from the fan base right now that even if you do make one or two changes, or even if you do, which I don't think they're going to do, even if they do trade a first-round pick and bring in a Chris Tanev, is that enough to fix what's wrong?
No.
And no, I mean, the answer has to be no. I mean, look, they finished fourth in the league last year. Look how far they have fallen. And it's not just, they didn't have a good offseason. They made mistakes. You know, we don't need to go through that and litigate all that again. But look at all the pieces that were here last year that have fallen off that they couldn't have anticipated. I mean, that's the big concern, and that's part of why there are so many things wrong. It's not just that all the new guys they brought in, or almost all the new guys. I shouldn't say all of them, because Jones and Benoit and some of them have played well. Most of the new additions have not worked out. But then you look at the year that Tavares is having, you look at the year that Brody's having, you look at the year that Samsonov's having. They have all of these key, Kampf is another one, all these key core veterans that they're committed to that had way better years the last 2 years that just aren't playing well right now. And it's all through the lineup. That Vancouver game, when Matthews was on the ice, they were all over them. They were dominating them. When Matthews wasn't on the ice, they lost the game.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what this team is. It feels like it is right now. If Tavares, I think, has one 5-on-5 goal in, was it 23, 24 games? He doesn't have a point in, I believe 8 games now. Like, that's your second line. And it's an expensive second line, and it's not giving you enough. And you don't want to play the third line with Domi and Robertson, or whoever else is with Domi. And the fourth line with Kempf is getting hemmed in every night. They're a one-line team. They are what their record says they are. They are a middle of the pack team right now.
Yeah, they're a one-line team, but there's only 2 players on the one line because they can't figure out what's going on with the left winger there, right? They're just they keep cycling through different options and nobody can stick. Tonight it's Pontus Holmberg. Tonight it's Matthew Nyes again, even though, yeah, Matthew Nyes looks like he's clearly hitting a bit of a rookie wall. He needs that break. Yeah, I don't blame him because of his age and the expectation and just the lack of time in the AHL, all of it. It's just he's in an impossible spot. But I was thinking about this last night. I did want to pitch it to you. I've got, if you're going to be this team, right, where you're only one line and it's 2 players, and you're not going to trust your third line anyways, and the third line isn't even the third line, right? It's they just have 2 fourth lines, essentially, the way that they deploy them, because they're both getting 10 minutes, and every night you look and it's some variance between, hey, one guy got 9, and then there's up to 11 something, and that's it, and then the Stars get their minutes, right? It's the easiest thing to do. I don't even know why I look at the ice times before I do Leafs talks anymore, because I know what they are. I know what they're going to be, and you saw it again yesterday. Why not see, because if I'm Tree Living, and I know that GMs, they don't want to tell the coach what to do. They want to try to keep separation of church and state. But if I'm the rest of Keefe's coaching staff, someone has to step up here and stop being just a complete yes man and go, all right, dude, you might be a good coach, but you've clearly got a blind spot here with just playing the Stars and deploying everybody the same way and expecting different results. That's the thing that's bothering me right now, is you go, what do you expect is going to change, Sheldon? Like, what do you think is going to, all of a sudden you're going to trust the Domi line if you keep calling them out in the media and saying you don't trust them? Like, is that going to do it? Because it's not working right now. And even when those guys have had some nice games or some nice moments, you look down at the score sheet and it's still the same ice time. So why not do this? Domi, Matthews, Marner, Bertuzzi, Tavares, Nylander, Gregor, Kampf, Yarncroc, and then just basically have a fourth line where, I don't want to say you're punting, but Nyes, Holmberg, McMahon.
Yeah, I mean,
he needs a checking line. That's the thing. He's always liked having that checking line. So you paid Kampf to be a checking line center. Let him be the checking line center. And people will bitch and moan about the way Domi plays defense. It's going to be that way. That's always who he was. Give him some more responsibility. He was fine in Dallas playing with good players. So put him out. Let him be protected by Matthews and Marner, but try to get a little bit more from him, and then start to say to all of your team, hey, you're all important. We're trying to figure something else new, because, again, the way that it's going right now, it doesn't make any sense to me that something is going to materially change with the group when it's the exact same formation and the exact same formula minutes-wise every single night.
Yeah, no, that's all fair. I don't know if Domi up on the top line is necessarily, I mean, just with the number of minutes that they would need him to play, I think that's, and the competition that he's going to be against, especially on the road, I put the chance of that as very, very low from Keefe. But at minimum, I mean, why not? I thought when they signed Domi, what they were going to do is they were going to create a really sheltered offense first line
Hard to create offense when you're getting 9 minutes a night.
Yeah, but I think probably trying him with Tavares again is probably the place to be. I mean, it can't get any worse for Tavares right now. So, I mean, the guy who's going to probably work the best with Matthews and Marner is the one who played well there last year, which is Yarncroc. But it's kind of weird. He's using Yarncroc as kind of like a safety net for Domi, who barely plays. It feels like, I don't know. It feels like he just go back to what worked last year.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense? I mean, and then shelter the Tavares line as heavily as you. I know they're already sheltered, and then try and create something down the lineup. But the problem is they don't have enough pieces. If you move Yarncroc up the lineup, they don't have enough pieces in the bottom six to do anything with it. Like
that's it. I think you got to give
almost be punting on two lines down there. Yeah.
No, give him the checking line. Give him the traditional checking line. This has been a Keefe staple from the very beginning. And remember when Hyman was getting moved down that one year, and it was. I think that was Sheldon Keefe's first full season, was coming into training camp. They were going, Hyman's going to go down to the third line. And it didn't end up sticking, but that was one of his points of emphasis that year. It was, well, I want to have a traditional checking line, and I trust this guy to do this job extremely well. Kind of a troubling sign, actually, that he even wanted to do that. Sort of like PJ Carlissimo wanted to play Kevin Durant as a point guard. I'm like, that's probably not a good sign that you thought that as a coach, considering how good Hyman is. But either way, he wants to have a group that he can rely on. And he keeps saying that he said that thing about the trust. And I went, okay, well then, you've got to either let a guy try to earn trust because it's not enough. It's just not enough of a sample size for some guys to do it. Like if my bosses told me that, they went, okay, you got to go prove to us that the show can get better. But then they said, you're only doing a 15-minute show. I would say, okay, what do you want me to do with this? How do you want me to prove to you that I can do this job better? That's the way I'd be feeling if I'm these other guys. And then to them, I would just be putting them in better positions to succeed, saying, okay, Domi, you're an offensive guy. You need to be playing with offensive players. Okay, Kampf, you need to be playing with defensive guys, and you need to have a complete role where they're deciding you're getting in regular ice time, and you guys are trying to, create an actual identity for your group. Because that's just it. It's like, I don't feel like any of these lines have an identity outside of Matthews, Marner, where it's the two of them are dominant together, right? Like, that's just it to me.
I kind of feel like no line juggling at this point is going to solve where they're at.
Well, this is the other problem, James. We keep doing the whole, well, go get a defenseman, go get a defenseman, go get a defenseman. And I'm watching them saying, well, there's a case where they might need a goalie. At least Samsonov played better and Wolves coming back, but they might need a goalie. You probably want to have a depth center. You'd love to have someone else that could play on the wing with Marner and Matthews. You'd love to have a defenseman, maybe even two. It's a long shopping list for a team that doesn't have all of their picks and has two prospects of note and little else.
They have as many holes as they've had in a long time. I mean, that 2019-20 season feels like when they had Barry and Cody CC and all kinds. This year feels like that, except that, I mean, the bizarre thing with this team is that their best player is on pace for 70 goals. Nylander's having a career year, on pace for more than 100 points, and they're still this bad. So both those guys are. You look at Matthews only had 40 goals last year. You look how much better Matthews and Nylander are, and they're still way down from where they were last year. And it's almost all on the defensive end and what they're giving up. The chances against have skyrocketed for this team, and the blue line's not that much different than last year.
Mm-hmm.
There's some bizarre stuff happening with this team right now.
Well, I don't want to get into this, but because I'm going to move off of it, but it's just it is kind of funny to me that we talk about, there's some misses, and you go, yeah, that's the margins that you're working within when this is the way you build a team. Is it forces you to go bargain shopping, and if you don't hit on all of the bargains, people go, well, the team is so thin. You say, yeah, but look at this formula. We can keep doing this dance about how the top four guys get X amount of points, and I'll just say even the top three, because Tavares is clearly not in that top four anymore. It's a problem that he's making as much as he's making, and he's clearly looking as though maybe age is getting to him a bit. I know there's some luck statistics with this, and there's slot chances or time that he's spending in there, and there's a certain mitigating factors, power play point stuff, sure. But ultimately, it's like, what we're talking about here is this is almost proof of concept that your formula doesn't work when your 3 stars are producing at astronomical rates, and yet the roster is struggling to stay above 500. Anyway, you think that the Leafs would have even had a conversation about Roy? No.
I don't.
It was interesting timing,
tenure,
right? It was interesting timing with Keefe being on the hot seat, and then all of a sudden, Lou Lamoriello, their former GM, was like, "We're going to go out and get the most attractive coach on the block."
I didn't hear a lot of talk about Patrick Waugh. I mean, there was with the Columbus job that Babcock ended up getting in the offseason. Like he interviewed there, and there was talk around him then. I think Patrick Waugh, his last go-around with Colorado, kind of scared almost everybody off of ever hiring him again, just with kind of the battling with the front office, and it did not end well for him. I believe his first year he wins a Jack Adams, and the next 2 years were a disaster, and he leaves in the middle of the season, right? So, and that's quite a while ago. That's 8-9 years ago, and he hasn't gotten a sniff. I think that's one of those like Hail Mary throws that Lou is known for throwing, and I saw that on Saturday, and I was like, oh, here we go. This is going to be interesting. And while you were watching your football, I had to watch the Islanders play last night, so that was
they came back.
It was a good game. Yeah. It was a good game.
I didn't see it. I just saw that they came back, and I was like, oh, Stars up 2-1. Well, big change, and then boom, all of a sudden, the Isles, the coaching change, dead coach bounce, and all of a sudden, everybody. I saw all over hockey Twitter that they played tough and that they were looking awesome. I went, oh, that can work.
It's a big change. It's a big personality change. Like Lane Lambert, I don't know if you know him that well. He's not a very big personality. And I was watching the MSG feed, and they had a camera. They had like split screen, and one camera was just on Patrick Waugh on the bench, and he was putting his arm around guys, and he was
honeymoon phase.
He was pushing some buttons for sure, and you can tell he's very fired up. I mean, one of the most competitive guys that ever played, and he's bringing that there. So the Eastern Conference, the Islanders all of a sudden figure some things out. The Eastern Conference gets even more interesting here.
Yeah, see, that's the thing to me when you go with the hard-ass coach and you're trying to do the culture shift. I do think it's going to be this isn't really something I plan on talking about today, but I've been thinking about this for a while. I think it's going to be hard in the future to be John Tortorella, right? Like the hard coach on this generation of player and the way that things are changing without having an immense amount of pedigree. And I don't know how you're going to survive long enough in modern sports culture to just become renowned as that type of a coach. But what you can still be is the guy who has all the accomplishments on the ice or in the field that you are coaching, right? You're a basketball coach, football coach, whatever. You're going to have that laundry list of a kid who is 23 years old knows who you are and is very familiar with who you are and the successes that you've had as a winner. And I kind of think like the modern day, that's what you're going to need. And that's why I like Roy actually as this coach. I get what you're saying about the Colorado thing. I think a lot of people thought maybe he was done when that happened and he would just be with the Remparts for the rest of eternity. But I don't know. I got a good feeling about that hire for them because of that.
I totally agree. Yeah, and you're right. If all of a sudden the Islanders catch fire and you look at what's happening in Edmonton, there's going to be... It doesn't have anything really to do with what's going on here, but people are going to point to that for sure if the Leafs keep muddling along here. Because it works. It works. A lot of the time it works. And I don't know if this team needs a hard ass. Everyone's talking about Craig Berube. I don't know if they need someone to come in here and yell at them if that's going to work or not. But at some point, they're going to have to try something.
Yeah. I wouldn't mind a hard ass just because that's the way these things go is... Even though Keefe has been that recently, like, again, he's yelling at guys on the bench to get off the ice. He's calling players out in the media saying he doesn't trust them. I don't know how much harder you want somebody to be on the players than that, right? Especially publicly, that, like, you can see. Who knows? Sheldon Keefe's not exactly Mr. Rainbows and Sunshine.
No, he's not.
Yeah, exactly.
No.
But I think that Leaf fans know that now. So the whole hardline thing to me is not so much about... hey, someone who's going to really press these guys and force them to do something. I think, again, it's more, hey, someone that the bottom six guys feel like they can trust more and is more invested in them. Because the scary thing is, and I pointed to this at the very beginning of the season when they were signing these guys, it's the mercenary squad. You don't have who's invested in seeing this team succeed? Who's all that invested in making sure that they're going to do blood, sweat, and tears through a regular season when you're trying to get your next contract, and that's probably weighing on you the more you don't play. That coach is doing it to you. You can't figure out what exactly he wants. You don't feel like you're getting enough opportunity. At some point, to me, that's the smarter move to play. And that's why I bring up the Domi stuff. I think that's a smarter move for Keefe to do right now and try to play the long game. And the fact that he keeps doing this makes me feel like he's playing the short game, which is a read on him not feeling overly secure about him staying in this role for too long. Anyway, they're struggling on the left wing. I said it. They've got addition after addition when it comes to who gets to play on the top grouping. I don't know. You can tell me if you feel differently about Nyes, but I think that he's really struggled lately. Robertson got in yesterday, but he's an 8 to 9 minute player. That's what Keefe will give him even on a night where he scores a goal against a bad team. Bertuzzi has been disappointing, but I don't think that you're really going to move him off that line. I don't know. He just kind of feels stapled to there. What was your understanding of whether they even were willing to consider signing Corey Perry?
I never heard.
Yeah.
I don't think he wanted to be here.
You think it was him?
Well,
because yeah,
I think it was I think it was probably mutual, but I don't think he was crazy about coming here.
Okay. Because to me, I thought it was the other way around. I thought it was not even a starter for this team.
Yeah, well, I mean, it wasn't exactly rainbows in Chicago. So, and I mean, Corey Perry, it's kind of like the Joe Thornton thing. Like he's not the Corey Perry of even 2 or 3 years ago.
People said that about Evander Kane too.
Yeah.
They said Evander Kane is not the same guy. Again. That's what I'm saying. It looks like a team that really wants to win. And they trust that their culture set by their top player is going to get guys in line. And it really has worked with Kane. Yeah,
I can see it. I feel like the Leafs need more than a guy who's going to be 38 years old playing on the fourth line.
Who says that's where it stops? Why wouldn't you just want to add a player? Like, I don't understand how a team like this that's so thin when it comes to their forward grouping that looks down at their AHL roster and says, what happens if we have an injury? And you go, boy, who's down here?
I do know
Steve's?
Edmonton was apparently like right at the front of the line. Like they were banging the door down to make this happen.
Fine. But that's what I want to hear about the Leafs. I know.
No
one
that's
thinks that it's
like,
a
there's
38-year-old.
There that, yeah. There's a contrast. Like Edmonton, for sure, wanted him right away. And there were a bunch of other teams that were like, I don't know. And, so. Mm-hmm. I don't think that the Leafs I don't think that they were heavily invested in getting him here.
Yeah.
Which is interesting because, like, I feel like they could use any kind of a change right now.
That's my point here, is that I just don't get how a team that is an injury away from putting Ryan Reeves back in the lineup is picking and choosing which guys, especially guys with the pedigree of Corey Perry, the ability of Corey Perry, the style of Corey Perry, that they're not one of the banging down the door teams, that they're not going, we want you here, we need you here. And I don't think that he's a fix-all. I don't think that Corey Perry comes in and sets the culture of the Toronto Maple Leafs. I understand why he wouldn't want to be here, especially considering it would be loud if Corey Perry signed in Toronto. I think that they would move past it. I really do believe that it's just like most things. Social media is going to be harsh for a week. It's going to be less harsh on the day 10. You start to acclimate yourself with the teammates. You say that you put the thing behind you, you're looking for another opportunity, that you got a long track record in the league. If you have a little success, boom, everything goes away. If it works out poorly, then everybody brings it up longer and longer and longer. But the greater point here is that we're illustrating that there's a long shopping list for this team. And I think it's going to be curious to see if they do head into a deadline, grabbing a depth forward, right? What is that going to cost you? And do you really think that depth forward is going to end up being better than Corey Perry? Because history suggests they will not be.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's an interesting question. I got to be honest. I wonder if there was any kicking tires or thinking about it in the off season and it was a no, and then that made it kind of a moot point this time around. Again, I don't know that. That's a theory that I have.
I'll tell you what, I much prefer that theory to we didn't want the optics of it.
Well, that wouldn't surprise me either.
I know, and that's the scary part. because hearing, hey, there wasn't even really an option for him to be there, that Leafs weren't even one of the teams in the running, I'm good with that if that's Corey Perry saying, I don't want to be there. I'm less good with that if that's the Leafs going, yeah, we just don't want to deal with the PR when you, what do you think their paid PR staff is compared to the other teams in the NHL?
They do.
Make it work.
The Leafs has an army, that's for sure.
That's it.
Yeah.
Make it work. Make it work. I'm pretty sure that this fan base would have tolerated, like, again, there would be some people on Twitter, there's probably some people tweeting at me right now angry about it. I think that is the vocal minority. Like, that is less than 1% of the fan base that I think would have been completely apoplectic if this thing happens. Anyways, speaking of Ryan Reeves, he gave a quote to our boy Luke Fox. Quote, yeah, I've been ready for a couple weeks now. Why he's not playing? Quote, that's a question for them. I'm not in those rooms, in those conversations. I'm not going to speculate anything. Just stay ready, and if called upon, I do. If I don't, I get my work in. There's more here, but yeah. That feels like the first in a... Do you think this guy's okay? We thought he was going to be all right just riding the pine. That doesn't feel like a guy who's all right just staying in the shadows and not being on the team and not being on the ice.
No. But I mean, we've heard, like Wayne Simmons said, we've heard this from players. I think what that is that's the beginning of the divorce happening. And, the Leafs are going to need, assuming that they're looking to upgrade at the deadline, they're going to need all the cap space they can get when Will gets back, and if they're carrying 3 goalies, et cetera, why not just put Reeves on waivers, see if anyone wants that contract? If not, you can send him up and down. I mean, in what scenario do you want him back in the lineup right now? The team is struggling. Like, they don't need another anchor on the fourth line.
It's the last thing they need.
Yeah, so they can't play him. So you might as well waive him, see if someone takes that contract. If not, you get a little bit of cap space. Maybe you try and push him out the door in a trade that you make.
Yeah. I feel like even though you can bury the contract after last year, it's a negative asset. Like, if you're a team and you're taking him on, you're not giving anything, and you're not taking, I don't think, that contract or that money for free.
No.
So there you go. Put him on waivers. I think the only reason you don't do that is because you don't want to embarrass the player.
Yeah, but the push could come to shove here where they do need the cap space as little as it is. When they get a little bit healthier here. I could certainly see that. I mean, if he's not playing, you might as well. And I think you're right. Like, no one's probably going to want him. But I was surprised someone signed him this year. He's one of those guys that has hung on and has found a suitor. The Rangers had a really tough start with him last year, and they found somewhere to trade him to in Minnesota. And the Wild were willing to offer him another contract in the offseason. So you never know. Maybe there's a team at the bottom of the standings that wants someone to help them with the culture change. And that's a team that's interested.
That would be great. that would be really...
You don't know till you push the waivers button, but it wouldn't surprise me if those comments lead to a conversation with the front office and they come up with some arrangement.
Yeah, I just... For me, the only reason that it was a little scary is the Leafs are in a tough media cycle right now. And they don't like the media stuff. We've talked about this, you and I, many, many, many times. It affects them. They don't like it. They make a big deal of it. They make a big show of it. And so while they're going through this, when people are saying, is Sheldon Keefe safe? And are they getting enough from the players that Tree Living signed? And what needs to change with this group? And are they getting some goaltending? And that's Samsonov. That's Byron I was seeing yesterday. I think there's a little bit of sparkle there. I think he's going to start Wednesday night. You can tell me if I'm wrong. But I think Reeves doing this at this time after they handed him that contract, 3 years. And I'm sure promises were made and he wants to play, blah, blah, blah. But for him to go and give that quote at this time is... that's a really tough look. And it's especially a tough look for Tree Living, who brought this guy in because he was supposed to help with the culture and he was supposed to be the quote machine from the dressing room. But that was when they were supposed to be playing, and that was supposed to be when he was playing good, not when things are going poorly.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with all of that. That's what I said. This feels like the beginning of, the players saying, I'm not happy, right? And the team is going to respond and say, so what? And then typically when you see something like this, when you see a player speak out,
Mm-hmm.
it's the beginning of some kind of a negotiation where the agent says, we want out of here.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
But I don't know if, like, with the 3 years though, like if it was a 1-year deal and the deal was up, he'd be easy to move. But
yeah, but that's what I don't get about him speaking out like this. I understand he's frustrated as a player and that he's trying to move the needle, and maybe he does think that this is going to move him somewhere else. But when you sign a 3-year contract with the team, I would have thought that some of that comes with, hey, you really got to be bought in. You really got to be like the consummate pro team player. Because we all thought that it had a very likely chance of being buried in the minors the final 2 years of that contract anyway, right? Like this was supposed to be a 1-year deal, like that looked like a 3-year deal. Would you not agree?
I think the Leafs were hoping 2 years.
Okay.
It looked like a 3, but yeah.
Okay, yeah. There's some belief that he wasn't going to spend all 3 years here getting to play top line minutes. This was supposed to be, hey, you're the enforcer of the team, you're the good guy in the dressing room, but if push comes to shove and this has to go some way, there's very likely chance that you can't play. You're this old and this is the way I'm shocked to see it start to turn like this. Here's the way I'll wrap it up. I didn't think the contract could get any worse, and yet here we are.
Well, the good news is you waive him, you send him down, only $200K of it counts against the cap, which is almost nothing. So you can bury almost the whole thing, and at some point that's going to happen.
Last one. You think Samsonov starts on Wednesday?
I don't know. I mean, Jones has been struggling. I don't know. That's a tough one. My guess is they're wrestling with that. I'm going to say I think so, just because they want to get him back right. And if he plays well, then that's going to be a real feather in his cap against that team. And I think you know what Jones is. I mean, they were playing with house money there. Like he played really, really well there, but it wasn't going to continue. And I think what you saw in the Vancouver game is more what Martin Jones is. And with the way this team's playing defensively, I don't know. So, I mean, we'll see. We'll see. I mean, your criticisms of Keefe are kind of playing everything safe. And I think probably the really safe play would probably be to play Jones.
Yeah, I think so.
I'm not sure that makes sense right now. I mean, they need to know what Samsonov, like, is Samsonov a factor in their season or not? They need to get that figured out.
That's it. I think that even though it's very small, it's a small sample of these last 2 Samsonov games, he's looked good. And last night, he looked better than a guy who only made 16 saves. It was pointed out to me from Petrelli last night on Leafs Talk that they had 9 high-danger opportunities in that game. And so he let one of them in, made 8 high-danger saves. And that's actually what he was good at last year, right? He was, I remember talking about this with Kevin Woodley, gave in a softie far too often, wasn't good enough from the perimeters, wasn't even as good as Matt Murray was when he was in net for the Leafs last year. But what he was very good at was making the spectacular saves. And if you look at what the Leafs are giving up right now and the way that they've played with transition and in their own end, I think you want to try to find the guy that can bail you out once in a while. This is no longer the team we thought they were, which was, hey, don't worry, everything's going to be outside, perimeter, just make the easy saves. You might have to have a guy steal you one game or two here. And during this stretch of play, I would roll the dice and play him Wednesday night. I can't believe I'm saying it because I genuinely did a farewell Samsonov show when I first came back. I thought it was completely over. But yeah, I think it would be a mistake not to play him on Wednesday night. And even if it backfires, I would say, hey, at least you were looking for a spark right now. You were looking for a change of pace. You thought that there was something with him. He got the belt. Try to build up his confidence. I just feel like that the ceiling with him is obviously so much higher than it is with Jones. So try to get him right. This is a good spot to do it. You only have 2 games until the All-Star break. You're splitting between these 2 goalies anyway, right? I would give one to Samsonov, one to Jones, but give Samsonov the one right after and say, hey, we're rewarding your good play and we still believe in you. If it's a confidence thing, it's a psyche thing. If they really do believe that, then how could you not say that showing confidence to somebody is going to help them play the position? It's backwards to me if they don't end up doing it.
Yep, I agree with that. And I mean, You want to know when Will gets back what's going on. Like, what do you have in the? Because if Samsonov can't play, if he's going on waivers again and going back down, you might have to think about adding a goalie. So you need to know if that's part of the equation or not.
Yeah,
and the only way you do that is if Samsonov plays a little bit here.
Yeah, agree. And again, according to Elliot Friedman, the Leafs looked at a goalie, but prices were too high. And yeah. I think that with Martin Jones, some of this is just him coming back down to earth and showing who he is at this stage of his career, which was a guy that was a third-string goalie entering the season. But part of it might even be that, yeah, he's getting a little rundown. Anyway, James Mirtle, Senior Managing Editor at The Athletic. Thanks as always, buddy.
Yeah, thanks, JD.
See you, pal.